Hi there, everybody, and welcome to Spring Has Sprung, our virtual family night. We are glad that you were able to make some more time to participate in this event since we missed the spring event due to snow closure. Only in Alaska. Anyway, please do tonight's events as a family. That's the purpose of family night, is that wonderful connection that we have between the school and our families and our students. So these activities are meant to be done with your family. You all should have received a kit, and in that kit is materials to make a bird feeder, and the instructions are included for that. That's for everyone. And then in most of the kits, there is materials for the cherry blossom windsock. That's an activity that's being done by our primary staff in kindergarten, first and second grade. Also in your kit, you're going to find a passport. That passport, as you complete the activities, just have your parents sign off on each activity you do. When you're all done, bring those back to the school, turn them into your teacher. Your teacher will turn them into the office, and then you'll be entered to win some prizes for participating in family night. Mr. McFeeters has video recorded everybody's presentations, and so you can work through them at your own pace and your own speed. But remember, work together through as a family. That's really important to us. All right, you guys, enjoy, and happy spring. The sun is coming. All right, bye now.
Welcome, HBSD families, to the Spring Has Sprung Virtual Family Night. If you follow directions, your items will still be all nicely put together like this. If you didn't follow directions, it's still going to work out just fine. So, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take your paper clip off, leave it over to the side. You're going to need it for later. Keep this string, and your string may be white. Some of them have the bluer kind, but you have a little knot up here, and then you have some loose trailing strings. Just kind of keep these separated and off to the side. You're also going to have 5 pieces of pink crepe paper. And what we're going to be using for all of these things is we're going to be creating a spring cherry blossom windsock. And you have your piece of paper like this that already has the tree branch painted on. Holes are cut up at the top, and make sure that you are keeping that in mind as you're making this. You're also possibly going to need a pair of scissors and definitely going to need some glue. So now we will pass on to the first grade teacher, Mrs. Armstrong.
Hello! You're going to take one of your streamers and you're going to start snipping it up. It doesn't tear very easily. So I'm just cutting it into squares real easily, and this is the fun part. Smush that. And then you're just going to glue the little smushy cherry blossoms on. Put them anywhere on those little branches. It's fun. It doesn't matter. It's a plant. They'll grow anywhere. Just stick them on there. Really go wild. Who's to say you're not putting them in the right spots? Okay, here we go. Just like this. Keep going. If you want to use another streamer, go ahead. You get to decide. It's your cherry blossom windsock. Stick some right there in the armpit of that branch. Okay. You can just keep cutting it up and keep adding them, as many as you want. Okay? All right. Miss Sanders, would you like to tell us the next step?
Yes. So after you have all of your blossoms glued down, you're going to turn your paper over, and you're going to take your remaining pink streamers and you're going to put your little streamers on the back. So you're going to glue 1, another piece of glue, 2, 3, 4. So after you get all of your little streamers glued down, you're going to flip it over. And then on the thick part of your branch, you're going to do a line of glue all the way at the top. And this is where your paper clip will come in handy. You're going to make sure that the circles or the holes at the top match up. So make sure those match up. And then keep your glue down. Take your paper clip. Maybe. Ooh. There's your fun windsock.
And then come back over to me and I will show you how to add on the part at the top. I didn't add on the streamers yet. That's okay. That's okay. Nobody will know. I put on my paper clip to hold this so that the glue will hopefully stick. Urgh. Now I need this. It's like a little half octopus. Okay? So we've got this little head up here. This is for your finger to go in. Because this windsock is not really an outdoor windsock. As you can see, it's just made out of paper. And we live in a wet place. So these are going to go through these little holes. This might be an area that you need like a big sibling or a very determined little sibling or a parent to help. And you're going to just stick it through the hole and then just tie a little knot. Just a little knot. I bet you know how to do that and you don't need to see the specifics of this. So there's one little leg. Now I don't want to make one leg really short and the rest of them really long. That would be silly. So make sure you're kind of making them the same length. Just gonna stick them through the hole, tie a little knot. Stick them through the hole, tie a little knot. If you tie it too tight, you're probably gonna rip your paper. So don't do that. But you know what? Who's to know? Who's to know if you make a mistake? It's okay. And 3 are tied. And last little leg of my half octopus. If you got the blue string, I'm sorry. It's a little sticky. And then you put your fingers through this hole and you can pull this, and if it had streamers, it would be far more impressive. But that's how you make your windsock, and then your children can run around the house like crazy people. It'll be great. Thank you. So glad you could join us.
I'm Miss Daly, I'm the 4th grade teacher.
I'm Miss Carlson, I'm the 5th grade teacher.
And I'm Mrs. White, I'm the 3rd grade teacher. We're gonna do acrostic poems.
Let me walk you through the steps of an acrostic poem. First, you need to pick a word, and since it's spring, I'm going to stick with the spring theme in hopes that it stays here. And I'm going to write my word vertically. So I've got spring. For each letter, you try to start your word with that letter. So hopefully I like to see sunshine in the spring. Whoops. Pouring. Right into my new garden. And so your goal is to create a poem that matches the word that you chose.
So you can also do different poems with the same word. This one was what I created out of spring. And I also used phrases, not just singular words. So I said sunshine, planting seeds, rain melts snow, I spy summer soon, new life and growth.
So I picked the word ocean for my acrostic poem. And some words that I chose that fit in with the theme of ocean: oasis, crashing waves, energizing, awesome, and nice. We would love for you to make your own acrostic poem, and you can check out our spring word bank to go ahead and provide some inspiration.
After you've created your acrostic poem, please bring it in to your teacher, and we would love to hang them to display in the elementary pod.
Everyone, my name is Jennifer Johnson. I am the elementary music teacher. When I think of spring, I think of flowers blooming and birds singing. Tonight I am going to share 4 excerpts from this book, Listen to the Birds, an Introduction to Classical Music. Music selection and explanatory notes by Anna Gerhard, and illustrations by Cecilia Varela. The first excerpt is called Spring. The music is Spring by Antonio Vivaldi. In 1726, Antonio Vivaldi published an expansive work consisting of 12 concertos for violin and orchestra. The first 4 concertos of this set are the famous 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter, which illustrate different aspects of the seasons through elements of musical language. Part of this sonnet that accompanies spring is as follows. Springtime is upon us. The birds celebrate her return with festive song, and murmuring streams are softly caressed by the breezes. Thunderstorms, those heralds of spring, roar, casting their dark mantle over heaven. Then they die away to silence, and the birds take up their charming songs once more. The first 2 verses of the sonnet are the backbone of the concerto's first movement. At each of the 2 bird references, the solo violin, first by itself and then accompanied by the rest of the orchestra, mimic bird calls and their melodic songs with its cheerful trills. The second excerpt is called The Bird. This is the bird theme from Peter and the Wolf by Sergei Prokofiev. The bird in Peter and the Wolf does not belong to a particular species. The first words that come to mind when one thinks of a bird are light, delicate, and nimble. This is why Prokofiev chose the bird to represent the sound of the flute. Sergei Prokofiev composed Peter and the Wolf to familiarize children with the sounds of an orchestra. In this work, all the characters in the story are represented by the characteristic timbre of an instrument. The tale's narrative is straightforward. One morning, Peter decides to go for a walk in the meadow, unaware of all the dangers and adventures that await him. Together with his friends, a bird, a duck, and a cat, he will have to confront a terrible wolf. The third excerpt is called The Swan. This is the swan from The Carnival of the Animals by Camille Saint-Saëns. The swan is a large bird belonging to the duck family. Mainly aquatic, it is still part of the only group of birds that can, to a certain extent, use the 3 means of locomotion: walking, flying, and swimming. Its elegant white plumage, its long delicate neck, and its majestic movement in the water have made this animal a symbol of beauty and harmony. This reputation has earned the swan a place in many tales and legends and has inspired fabulous musical works, including The Swan from The Carnival of the Animals. In this piece, Saint-Saëns leaves irony and humor aside to write a magnificent elegy led by the cello, accompanied by pianos. It is the only piece from the Carnival that the composer deemed worthy of being published before his death. In 1905, the great Russian ballerina Anna Pavlova performed The Dying Swan, a romantic ballet set to the music of Camille Saint-Saëns' The Swan, which was met with great success. And the fourth excerpt is called The Cuckoo and the Nightingale. This is The Cuckoo and the Nightingale from the Concerto for Organ and Orchestra by George Frederick Handel. As its name suggests, the second movement of this concerto mimics a dialogue between a cuckoo and a nightingale. The nightingale, a small gray bird with red spots on its back, is highly admired for its song, so much so that in many languages, calling a human singer nightingale is considered a great compliment. The nightingale symbolizes love in numerous fairy tales and legends, one of the most famous being The Nightingale and the Rose by Oscar Wilde. In this tale, the nightingale sacrifices itself to allow a young man to bring his sweetheart a rose. In the Baroque era, the organ was reserved for serious religious music. George Frederick Handel had the idea of taking advantage of the tremendous potential of this instrument by using it as a solo instrument in concertos presented during the interludes of his oratorios. In this new genre, which was well suited to Handel's character, he played the organ himself, showcasing his talent as an organist and charming the public with his cheerful and lively music. The Cuckoo and the Nightingale is a favorite of all these concertos. Thank you and have a great evening. Happy spring.
Hello, my name is Lisa Andreessen, and I teach language arts in the middle school. My presentation is going to be on writing poetry from pictures that you can find on your smartphone. Let me share my screen here. So the first thing that you can do with this idea is to pick a theme, because you probably have a ton of photographs on your phone, and which one do you pick to write a poem from? So sometimes it helps to narrow the focus. So I was trying to think of different themes for April. There's Earth Day in April. It's renewing with springtime, giving, maybe being creative after the long winter, maybe a theme of family. So I brainstormed a couple of these. So you could do it one of two ways. You could think of a theme and then hunt for a picture that way. Or you could find a picture that you really like and then go back and decide which theme you think it works best for. I kind of did it both ways in my example. So I went through my phone, and this is a picture of my daughter, Lydia, who got to be the co-pilot in a seaplanes flight that we did recently. And I thought it was a cute picture. She was pretty excited to be up there. I just hope she didn't touch anything. And but I couldn't really think of a theme to go with it. So I kept hunting on my phone. And then I found this picture when we visited my daughter Madeline up in Fairbanks. They had the ice sculptures there, and it reminded me, they kind of acted like kids in an amusement park and going around, and there was different sculptures that you could sit on and interact with. And I thought that would be kind of a fun thing to describe as a poem, with the theme of maybe family. And with the cold and the colors, you could probably get pretty creative with your language for that. But I wasn't like totally into that, so I kept looking. And when we were traveling back through Juneau, it was exciting to be in a mall after not going into a lot of stores during the pandemic. And as I was walking through the Nugget Mall, they had this amazing sculpture made of aluminum of kind of the bare bones of a Tlingit canoe. And I've always been like really fascinated with Tlingit art. I just think it's beautiful and utilitarian, and just the design of it. And then I was reading the artist statement to it, and I was really struck by it. After everything our country has gone through and been so polarized. And they were talking about, of course, the usefulness of canoes and the importance of them, and then of everyone working together when you do subsistence food gathering, of everyone having to work together, and of how with the government being set up as the Tlingit and the Raven. And I was struck because next to it, they had the artist statement. And I was really struck by this quote that the artist said, "There were conflicts, but the requirement was to always engage, uphold, and take great care of your opposites with the utmost respect, ensuring that people are always progressing for the collective good of humanity." And so I almost picked this one because I thought it would be like a real serious writing, but I didn't see it as a poem. You could do it as a paragraph. This technique doesn't just have to be for poetry, but I was in the mood for more kind of a fun poem. And it was Easter time, and my daughter is a senior. And I was thinking, like, oh no, is this like the last time that we might do Easter stuff together for a while as she goes off to school next year? So we decided to dye Easter eggs. And when you have an adult child and access to Pinterest, you can get pretty creative in the different things that you did. So we looked up different kinds of ways to dye eggs to get creative that way. And this was one of my eggs that I did. It was really cool that you put baking soda that you had the dye all in, and you painted on there, and you poured vinegar on it, and it just like fizzed like a volcano and modeled all the colors on it. And so there was a couple other techniques that we did. So the next step is, once you have your picture, think of what memory, because really like a photo a day is kind of like a memory of what happened during that day. And I get really intimidated by writing poetry sometimes. So I always do all kinds of tricks I can think of how do I write poetry easily. And one of my favorite ways is to start off with prose, to start off with a paragraph. So that's what I did here. I'll just read it out loud. I've been dyeing eggs since I was a child, and with my own children. We hadn't done it in years. As kids, we blew out the eggs by poking a hole in each end, scrambling in the yolk, and blowing out the contents to get a fragile, empty shell instead of hard boiling them. Now we didn't have to hard boil them and only keep them until they got rotten or eaten. Pinterest inspired us with new ideas for Easter egg dyeing: volcano eggs, galaxy designs, where you put oil and water together with the dye, and it makes interesting designs on it. Dyeing rice and shaking the eggs in there, it gives kind of a cool speckle. When you have adult children, things get more creative. We coated them in Mod Podge to strengthen the shell. And so then the next step that you would do after you've kind of written up, and it doesn't even have to be that great, it can just be pretty rough. I did not spend a lot of time writing the paragraph here, is now you want to break it up and make it just look like a poem. And I basically just like, how long should that line be? Maybe about this long, kind of make them about the same, and just hit return for each like half sentence or phrase that was in it. And so then I had something that looked like this. It was more straight. And then the next step that you go through is kind of editing it. Now you have to make it sound like a poem. What are some language that I could add that's more descriptive? Or what could I cut in it? Because poetry doesn't have like every single word that you might have. You kind of just give a few words so that the reader kind of gets an idea, and they can put in their own images and thoughts on what is going on. And then if you have younger kids, you don't have to do even that long. Even just writing 3 sentences or transcribing, if they're kindergarten or first grade, is having them tell you 3 sentences, and you can write those. And then you could even cut them out on pieces of paper and have them move the words around and cut things down. And so then I started to make it more into a poem. And this is pretty small, so I'm actually going to go to a different document so you can read it better. All right, call this Easter Egg Dyeing in Each Childhood Generation. As kids, we blew out eggs, poking a hole in each end, scrambling the yolk, hard breath to get a fragile, empty shell. A longer shelf life than hard boiled. Pinterest inspires grown-up children today with new ideas for Easter egg dyeing: vinegary volcano eggs fizz, oil and water swirl into galaxy designs, dyed rice shaken not stirred, making muted speckles. Adult children are creative, still indulging in youthful pastimes and bringing a new twist to fill the Easter basket. And then even as every time I read it, you can read it over a couple times, you can see like, what else could I tweak? And I was thinking, this has got a little wordy: scrambling the yolk, hard breath, fragile, empty shell, longer shelf life. Maybe I do need that a longer shelf life than hard-boiled, a longer shelf life than hard-boiled. Sometimes when you read over sentences, lines, especially if you haven't seen them for a couple of days, you're like, I really like how that sounds, and what could I fix? This maybe should be on its own line. As kids, we blew out the eggs, poking a hole in each end, scrambling the yolk. Hard breath, fragile empty shell, longer shelf life than hard-boiled. Maybe I don't need the A. And then also I was thinking maybe I want to separate this, my James Bond illusion here, shaken not stirred, is maybe put a dash. Right, and then you have a cute little poem that encapsulates a little memory that goes with that picture. I hope you try it out. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mark Fontenot, and this is my colleague Jordan Baumgartner and my other colleague, chocolate supplier Lee Robinson. Today what we're going to show you is how with a Hershey bar and a microwave oven, we can determine the speed of light to a reasonable accuracy. And so all you need to know is this. I feel like that's pretty clear and self-evident. Or maybe it's not because it's Greek. Literally it's Greek. This is the symbol lambda that we use as physicists for wavelength. Can't just say WL because we're physicists. And then this is nu, the Greek character nu that stands for frequency. This is the symbol for the speed of light, c, because Einstein said it should be. And when Einstein says stuff, people agree. Since it probably doesn't mean anything to you, I'd like to offer an analogy. If you've ever stood by a railroad track and watched a train car go by, imagine that you knew that each train car was 20 meters long, and you saw that they were going by at a rate of 2 cars every second. Could you tell how fast the train was going? 2 cars go by you in a second, each car 20 meters. So you got 40 meters passing you in a second. Train's going 40 meters per second, right? Light waves are like trains because they're a repeated event. There's an electrical field and a magnetic field oriented perpendicularly. They're sinusoidal, and this would be the length of one train car. So if we know how many train cars are going by every second, which we do because General Electric, the maker of the microwave, tells us the frequency of this device is 2,450 megahertz. That means 2,450 million waves go flying out of the magnetron in there every second. So we know how many train cars are going, how fast the train cars are going by. We want to know how long the train cars are. That's where the chocolate comes in.
Yes.
You want to?
And our slinky. So wave or energy travels in waves, and light is a form of energy, and it travels in waves too. So if we wanted to say how far it's going or how fast this is moving, we know that light is going to travel in a wave. So it'll travel from one place to another.
Let's get a standing wave.
Okay, and we'll get a standing wave. Okay, so in our standing wave, we know that there are different parts. Okay, we have the node where it's staying.
This place
still.
is not moving.
Yeah, and then we have our antinodes, the highest points of this, or the crest and the trough. So what we're going to do with the bar of chocolate, we're going to put it into the microwave, and we're going to measure where these nodes and these antinodes are, so we can find the wavelength or the speed of light.
Right, the waves that the magnetron in the microwave emits bounce around in there, and they set up standing waves just like we just did with that slinky. And so where the nodes are is where the energy is most intense, and that, or antinodes, are where the energy is most intense. That's where the chocolate will melt first. So we put the candy bar in the microwave, hit go, and hope that we time it right to see where it's just started to melt,
Yeah.
but hasn't completely turned into a puddle.
Yeah. So the bar of chocolate, these nodes where it's staying still, that's where it was the not as hottest, I guess, where it's not as hot.
Right.
So this will be the hardest part of the chocolate, and then these antinodes is where it's going to melt, because that's where the wavelength was most intense, the heat was most intense. So we're going to measure that distance from one node to the next node. But we have to multiply that by 2 because we have to get a whole wavelength.
Yeah, that would give us the half wavelength. We want a whole, so whatever we measure, we double. That becomes the wavelength. We multiply that by the frequency that General Electric tells us is this number times 1,000,000. Bam, speed of light.
Let's do it. So when you first start this, you want to take the rotisserie turning mechanism out of the microwave so you can get a good measure for the wavelength. You're going to put the chocolate in there for 15 seconds about, so that when you feel it, when you pause it or take it out, you're going to feel to see that there's a hard part in the chocolate and then there's some soft parts.
Yep.
And that will give us our nodes and antinodes. Okay.
We got them.
Perfect. Check it out. Ruler time. Oh yes. All right, so what you're looking for here, you can see that there are hard parts and there are soft parts. The soft parts where the puddles of chocolate are, those are your nodes, and then your antinodes, and then the nodes are the hard parts. So you want to measure this will be half a wavelength, so from one to the other. So we'll go from the middle to the middle of the next one. So we'd say that's about 7 centimeters?
7 centimeters.
7 centimeters.
0.07 meters.
Yep, so we'd have to convert that to meters.
All right, it's calculator time.
All right, we got it. So the first thing we have to do to calculate the speed of light with the chocolate bar, we know that the frequency of the microwave is 2,450 megahertz, but we have to change that to hertz. So we have to take 2,450 and multiply that by 1 million.
That's what mega means.
Mega is 1 million. We get this big number right here. So that's our frequency that we have, but we need to multiply that by the wavelength. And we said the wavelength was 7 centimeters that we measured with our ruler. So that's half of a wavelength. So we need to multiply this by 0.14, and that should give us our number for the speed of light. So for this, we got 343 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros.
343 million meters per second.
For the speed of light.
The accepted value is closer to 300 million meters per second. So we're off by a little because the melt puddles are not so easily defined as exactly where you should measure from. Not bad, we're certainly within a power of 10 of the truth. And now we've got some melted chocolate to enjoy.
Yeah. Pretty good for a bar of chocolate.
Not bad.
Let's do it.
And then we make some more.
Let's do it. So the best part of this whole experiment, we have melted chocolate. So you might as well make some more.
We're gonna do the usual, light it on fire, blow it out, and call it good. I'm gonna try for a little finer toasting, or maybe not. Let's go. I'm gonna put it right in the puddle. Oh, there we go. So after slaying the marshmallow with a Neanderthal spear, encapsulating it in graham cracker and chocolate melted by microwaves traveling at the speed of light, the result is some more.
Everyone, my name is Mrs. Miller. I'm the art teacher here at Haines School, and today I am going to just walk you through how I make paper mache in the classroom. At the end of the year, we're going to be putting together a big, large sculptural installation in the school library, and we're going to be using a bunch of paper mache pieces made by all grade levels of students, K through 12, and I wanted to invite you at home, if you are interested in being a part of it, to invite you to possibly make a small piece to help contribute. So first, I'm going to show you how I whip up paper mache, then I'm going to show you how to lay it on a piece of cardboard, really simple, and then kind of what it looks like when it dries. So my simple paper mache, all it requires is a little bit of all-purpose flour. I use hot water. You can do this on a stove. Some people cook paper mache. I'm just using hot water from a tea kettle, an electric tea kettle that I used, a little bit of cool water, and then I also use a small amount of the Stay-Flow liquid starch. And all these things get put together and cook the tiniest amount with that hot water and then make up your paper mache paste. So I'm gonna start with just this amount of all-purpose flour. And obviously, if you are making this at home, you can make a small batch at first. And then I'm gonna add in some hot water. and you can see it steaming off of there. And it kind of cooks just a little bit like oatmeal. We want to get all that gluten started. So it kind of looks like this glutinous mass. And I'm gonna keep adding as I go. Just like I tell the kids, it's kind of like making pancake batter. Same thing. And so I'm gonna keep adding and adding as I go. And I'm gonna continue doing this until I get about the consistency of pancake batter. Right now it's like more like oatmeal. I just added in a little bit of cold water. And I'm gonna keep whisking. And then I also add in about, depending on the size of the batch, a couple tablespoons of the Stay-Flow starch. So I'll put a little bit of that into the mix. And then continue whisking it until I have very few lumps, although the lumps are not that big of a problem, and the kids love to get out the lumps, so that works for me. And then eventually, after you continue whisking this, you'll get to more of a consistency of a pancake batter. This is some paper mache paste I mixed up today with the second graders. On your hands, oh yeah, it feels great on your hands. On your hands, it should be fairly thin. You shouldn't have like a thin amount of liquid. We don't want it to get super gloppy and gloopy, but we do want all the paper to be covered. So I'm going to actually be using, let me wipe my hands off really quick. I'm going to be using two different types of paper, and I'm going to show you, I just use a little bit of cardboard. So I'm going to be using a piece of cardboard just like this to create a leaf. I actually cut the cardboard on an original fold so that I can get that nice kind of, I guess, the vein in the center of the leaf there. And I'm going to be using just paper from a paper bag, and also some old, actually old dictionary paper that Mr. Van Wy gave me. So we're repurposing them for our sculpture. And they both work excellent for paper mache. And with the younger students, this can get a little messy, and my quick tip for them is to always squeegee the paper mache. So I'm going to use a little piece of the dictionary paper, and I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, which is what I do with them, and they let it drip over the top, and take their 2 fingers and squeegee it out. And make sure they squeegee it all off. They can use the side of the bowl, and then they lay it right on top of their piece of cardboard, and if it overlaps at all, they fold it around. And they will continue to do this. So we'll do one more, 1, 2, 3, squeegee. Make sure we don't have a bunch of gloppy, gloopy paper mache dripping everywhere. And then smooth it, and always overlap, because that's where the strength comes from. When all this flour and gluten dries, we want all that paper to be overlapped. So I have students go through, and they actually do a whole layer of the book paper. So this is a piece, this is a leaf that was done today by a second grader. They went over, almost all the way over with some book paper. And then we'll go around a second time with the brown paper bags. So this one needs a little bit of a cleanup. Sometimes we'll get some gloppy paste there, which can be smoothed out later on. And then this is a dry one that has been finished up and all ready to paint. And so this is 2 or 3 heavy layers of paper mache. It becomes quite hard yeah, ready to be permanently installed in an installation piece, which is very exciting. These are a few of my painted ones actually from last year. So right before COVID, I had students working on these, and we painted them, and then we went away for spring break, and they have been patiently waiting to go into an art installation, and they have the students' names on them as well. So all of these are going to get combined together. The younger primary students have been doing these simple cardboard leaves, and then as they get older, they get a little bit more structure. I use wire, I use cereal boxes, all the way up to these kind of layered flower pieces. And this is a high school piece that is created by just using a little bit of brown paper for a center, scotch tape, wire, and then cereal boxes, and then covered with that book paper. So paper mache is a really fun thing that you can do at home with your children and your students. It's an easy way to create sculptures and use just what you have in your kitchen. And I hope you have fun. And if you're interested in creating a leaf or a piece to put in our kind of garden installation that will be in the library, just feel free to get a hold of me and let me know. You can send me an email, and that's gmiller@hbsd.net. Have fun.
So today we're going to talk bubbles. We've been talking bubbles for about a year, but I've had enough of those kind of bubbles, so we're going to talk about these kind of bubbles. What you need to make this kind of a bubble is not a whole bunch of your friends and close family friends, but what you need is 16 cups of water, a cup of detergent. Now I used Joy. You could use Dawn. There's some Dawn in a cup here, and it can be any size cup as long as it's 16 parts of water and about a part of detergent. And then what you're going to do is you're going to add some baking powder. And baking powder right out of the kitchen, that's going to help to make your bubbles better. In fact, if you don't have baking powder, sometimes we have cornstarch, not cornmeal, but cornstarch. You can put about the same amount, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch in there. And once you get that set up, if you want to make really nice bubbles, swing by the grocery store and get some glycerin. Glycerin might be in the baking section because they use this stuff to make frosting nice and shiny. So we're going to have to make one of those little rings that we blow the bubbles through, but we want our bubbles to be bigger, so we have to have a bigger ring. So if you can get yourself a couple of sticks, it could be anything. It could be a little bit of alderwood, it could be a couple of yardsticks. I've got a couple of dowels here. If you take some eye hooks, screw them into the end. You could even put a nail in there, just bend the nail over. All you need is something to be able to tie onto. So making a nice big round ring for your bubble making, a lot of people say you can use a piece of rope, but I found that a piece of rope doesn't work so good. It doesn't soak enough up. You can use something like jute, but jute's not very thick, so you won't make a big bubble. So what I did is I got an old sock. I think this was Mr. McFeeder's sock. I'm glad he washed it for me before we used it. And all I do is I cut it like one of those curly fries. And if I just cut all the way around and I go all the way around my sock, and you want to use a cotton sock if you can, until you get to the very end, you're going to have a big, long piece of fabric. It's going to look something like this one right here. You tie it onto the end of your sticks, whether you have nails in there or eye hooks, whatever. It doesn't have to be neat and clean. You can see I didn't do a great job. Before you tie it on, take a nice washer or something that's heavy like that you can slip over the fabric. Hang it on there, and that way you're going to have a weight so that you can make bubbles. Better than the bubbles we've been in for the last year. So you want to make sure that you've got your bubble mix at room temperature. I tell you, you want to let your bubble mix sit around for a couple of hours in the air temperature that you're going to be doing this in. In fact, this bubble mix has been sitting around for a week. And I think the longer it sits, maybe the better it gets, certainly for a day. The first time I made this, I made bubbles within minutes, and the bubbles were the size of basketballs. But I let it sit for a couple of hours, and all of a sudden the bubbles were the size of, like, large children. Now just spread it out. Let your breeze outside. It's going to be a good weekend for that. Let your breeze just press against. Like this right here, where it just keeps getting longer and longer and longer and longer. Oh, most kids can do better than I can do. You gotta be really patient. You hold it up and you spread it out and you keep spreading, it doesn't work. So you just spread it a little bit. Just let it build and build and build. Get a nice bubble out of that. That was a pretty decent bubble. You can name your bubbles. This bubble's gonna be named Alex. Watch that. Yep. It's going to be a great weekend to make bubbles.
So I'm Darwin Feeks. I'm the vocational teacher here at the high school. I teach the wood shop, and tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about bowl turning. We got a bunch of bowl blanks from a local turner who's retiring. So made things pretty nice for us. They're all spalted. This is a spalted birch. You can tell it's spalted by the coloration of the grain in there. And so he turns them, rough turns them green to about where we're at now. And it's mounted up on the lathe in a chuck here, and the tailstock center is in. I'm going to turn the outside first and get it all shaped up. I have a piece of bark that fell off there, so I need to turn it down to get rid of that, and then I'll work on the inside. So I got rid of my piece of bark. I'm just going to give a rough shape to the outside of this. So now I'm going to turn my tool rest around here and work on the lip of the bowl a little bit. And then I'll work on the inside. One of the things I love about the lathe is that it's really kind of a tactile thing. You just kind of go by feel and what feels right, what looks natural. I'm going to take my center out so I can work on this bottom. I'll clean up my sides a little bit, and then I'll be ready to do some sanding. Have it basically to shape now. I'm going to do some sanding. I'll start out with a very coarse 60 grit sandpaper, and I'll move up sequentially 60, 80, 100, 220. Get it wet so it raises the grain, so when I do my final sand and add my finish, it won't raise the grain as much. So I just got to let it dry here. Sand it again with my 220. finish I'm going to use is a solid bowl finish. It's basically beeswax, so it's a food grade finish. Just gonna so now I need to take it out of the chuck and cut this piece I've been holding it on with off. So I'm going to carve this very center stub off. So I want to, this is all flat now, so I want to kind of countersink my center just a little bit so I don't have to worry about it so much. So my bowl will ride on this outside rim that I'm leaving. Do a light sand on that, and then we'll take her off the lathe and carve that spot off and put a little finish on the bottom. So there we go. I'll carve my center off here, put a little bit of finish on it, and we'll have a nice bowl. So I'm just going to use a hook knife and carve this off. Got to make sure you stay out of the way of your knife and that your knife can't go too far, so it's kind of the break. Here we go.